She had already boarded the flight. Her ticket was valid, her seat was confirmed, and millions of dollars in business depended on her arrival. But before the aircraft doors could close, airport security walked down the aisle and ordered the black woman to leave. Passengers watched in silence, assuming she had done something wrong. They had no idea they were witnessing a mistake that would cost far more than anyone could imagine. Hours later, one decision would send shockwaves through an entire airline and leave powerful executives scrambling to undo the damage. How did a routine flight become a $5 billion disaster? Every successful journey in Maya Ellison's life had been built on persistence rather than privilege. At 43 years old, the accomplished Black entrepreneur had spent nearly 2 decades transforming a small travel consulting company into one of the nation's fastest-growing corporate travel groups. Her business managed travel operations for hundreds of major organizations, moving thousands of passengers every day and negotiating contracts worth billions of dollars with airlines around the world. Despite her remarkable success, Maya never forgot where she came from. She remained known for treating employees with respect, supporting minority-owned businesses, and believing that dignity should never depend on someone's appearance. That morning had started like countless others. Dressed in a tailored navy blue pantsuit with a white silk blouse and carrying a black leather briefcase, Maya arrived at the airport for what was supposed to be another routine business trip. She had a confirmed first-class ticket and a tightly scheduled meeting that could shape the future of several major partnerships. Everything about the day appeared perfectly ordinary. The terminal buzzed with travelers rushing toward their gates, flight announcements echoed overhead, and airline staff prepared another aircraft for departure. Maya calmly boarded with the other first-class passengers, greeted the cabin crew with quiet confidence, and settled into her assigned seat while reviewing documents for the meeting ahead. Nothing about her behavior attracted attention. Yet only moments after she fastened her seatbelt, subtle glances from nearby staff began replacing ordinary hospitality. A brief exchange between airline employees was followed by concerned looks toward her seat. Passengers continued finding their places, unaware that an ordinary boarding process was quietly turning into something far more disturbing. Within minutes, a decision based not on evidence, but on assumptions, would change the course of that flight and ultimately force an entire airline to confront the cost of prejudice. As passengers settled into their seats and overhead bins clicked shut, the atmosphere inside the aircraft felt perfectly ordinary. Maya Ellison remained focused on the presentation open on her tablet, making a few final notes before takeoff. She barely noticed 2 members of the cabin crew exchanging uneasy glances toward the front of the cabin. Within moments, a quiet conversation near the aircraft door turned into hurried radio calls, and the mood inside the plane shifted almost instantly. Then airport security stepped onto the aircraft. The uniformed officers walked directly down the aisle with purpose, drawing the attention of every passenger on board. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Curious whispers spread from row to row. Without hesitation, the officers stopped beside Maya's first-class seat. Their expressions remained cold and unyielding as they instructed her to gather her belongings and leave the aircraft immediately. Confusion swept across the cabin. Passengers instinctively assumed there must be a serious reason. Some stared in disbelief, while others quietly reached for their phones. Maya looked around calmly, clearly searching for an explanation that never came. She had followed every airport procedure, presented valid identification, passed security screening, and boarded with a legitimate first-class ticket. Yet none of those facts seemed to matter. Instead of clarifying the situation, the security team became even more determined. They insisted there had been a concern regarding her presence on the flight, but refused to explain further. The flight attendants avoided eye contact, and the silence surrounding Maya became almost as painful as the accusation itself. Every pair of eyes in the premium cabin followed her as she slowly collected her briefcase and stood from her seat with quiet dignity. The walk down the aisle felt far longer than it really was. Each step carried the weight of public humiliation. Some passengers lowered their eyes in discomfort, while others continued recording, sensing they were witnessing something deeply unfair. Maya never argued. She never resisted. Years of leadership had taught her that composure often speaks louder than emotion. But inside, the sting of being judged before being heard was impossible to ignore. Outside the aircraft, the humiliation continued. Airport supervisors questioned her ticket, verified her identification again, and repeatedly reviewed documents that had already been approved. Every answer confirmed the same truth. Maya had done absolutely nothing wrong. Even so, the delay stretched on while the aircraft remained parked at the gate. Inside the terminal, employees exchanged nervous looks as uncertainty spread through the airline staff. Then, everything changed. One senior operations manager recognized Maya's name. His expression shifted from routine professionalism to visible alarm as he reviewed her corporate profile. Within seconds, hurried phone calls echoed through the terminal. Managers who had shown little concern only moments earlier suddenly rushed toward the gate. Executives began appearing from restricted offices. The confidence that had fueled the removal quickly dissolved into panic. What security believed was an ordinary passenger dispute was about to become one of the most expensive mistakes the airline had ever made, and the people responsible still had no idea just how much was about to unravel. The moment the senior operations manager finished reviewing Maya Ellison's profile, the atmosphere inside the terminal changed completely. Executives hurried toward the departure gate with expressions of disbelief. Supervisors who had confidently defended the decision only minutes earlier suddenly fell silent. The same security officers who had escorted Maya off the aircraft now stood frozen, realizing they had removed one of the airline's most influential corporate partners without a single piece of evidence to justify it. The truth spread faster than anyone expected. Maya wasn't simply a first-class passenger. She was the founder and chief executive of a global travel management company responsible for arranging billions of dollars in corporate travel every year. Her organization oversaw travel contracts for hundreds of major companies, and one of its largest airline partnerships was the very carrier that had publicly humiliated her. The realization hit like a shockwave. Every executive understood what was now at risk. This wasn't only about one passenger being treated unfairly. It was about an entire corporate relationship built over years of trust that had been shattered in a matter of minutes. Employees exchanged anxious looks as emergency meetings were called. Phones rang nonstop. Senior leaders rushed to assess the damage before the aircraft had even left the gate. Maya remained remarkably composed. She never raised her voice or demanded special treatment. Instead, she quietly reviewed the reports placed before her, documenting every moment of the incident exactly as it had happened. The humiliation she had endured could not be erased, but neither could the facts. Those facts would soon speak louder than any explanation the airline could offer. Then came the decision that changed everything. Within hours, Maya instructed her executive team to suspend negotiations and immediately withdraw nearly $5 billion in planned corporate travel agreements and future funding commitments connected to the airline. News of the decision spread through the company's leadership and quickly reached the aviation industry, sending executives into crisis mode. In a single afternoon, an act driven by assumption had become a corporate disaster measured not only in dollars, but in lost trust, damaged reputation, and a lesson the airline would never forget. But the financial consequences were only the beginning. The real impact of that day was about to be felt far beyond one airport terminal. By the end of the day, the flight had departed, but the airline's reputation was already facing turbulence far greater than any storm in the sky. Internal investigations were launched, senior executives issued public statements, and urgent meetings focused on reviewing policies, bias training, and accountability. The incident spread rapidly across news outlets and social media, where millions of people questioned how a successful Black business leader with a valid ticket could be publicly removed without clear evidence of wrongdoing. Maya Ellison returned to work carrying far more than the memory of a missed flight. She carried the painful reminder that success, influence, and professional achievement do not always shield someone from prejudice. After spending years building a respected company and earning the trust of countless clients, she had still been judged in a matter of seconds by assumptions that ignored her humanity. Yet she refused to let humiliation define her response. Instead, She allowed integrity, documentation, and principled leadership to speak louder than anger ever could. In the weeks that followed, corporations across the travel industry renewed conversations about implicit bias, equal treatment, and the responsibility every employee carries when making decisions that affect people's lives. For many, Maya's experience became more than a headline. It became a powerful example of how one moment of discrimination can destroy years of trust and trigger consequences that extend far beyond a single passenger or a single flight. Stories like Maya's remind us that racism is not measured only by hateful words or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it appears in quiet assumptions, unequal treatment, or decisions made before the facts are known. Those moments may last only minutes, but the emotional scars and the damage to trust can last for years. The true strength of a community, a company, or a nation is revealed not by how it treats the powerful, but by whether it treats every person with equal dignity before making judgments. So, if you witness someone being treated unfairly, would you stay silent? Or would you become the person who stood up for what was right? If this story made you think, share it with someone else, continue the conversation, and remember, real change begins the moment ordinary people refuse to accept prejudice as normal.